Aston Villa have shocked the Premier League yet again, this time beating Manchester City by 1-0. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down how they did it. We're going to be taking a look at the tactics that Unai Emery and Aston Villa used to not only stop Man City, but also allow themselves to go forwards and get that all-important win. To beat Man City, Aston Villa had to stop Man City first, and that is something they did pretty brilliantly. To look to try and stop this midfield dominance that City would have after pushing John Stones into midfield next to Tijani Reinders. It was then the utilisation of Phil Foden and Bernardo Silva in those inside pockets that City would look to do most of their work. But what Aston Villa did so well is they kept themselves really narrow and really compact, in particular looking towards the battles between Onana and Foden and Kamara and Silva, following those runs into those deeper channels, but also making sure that they had a really nice pressurised zone in the centre of the park between the two centre-backs and between the two centre midfielders. It was then imperative that both the wide players in the fullbacks and the wingers came across as well, making sure that the spaces between each other were so very tight and compact, preventing any kind of player from really drifting infield. Look at the zone where Foden and Silva are. You can't get the ball to him. It's almost creating a wall in front of those two players, preventing that space from being exploited. At that point, it was then about moving the ball for Manchester City out wide, making sure that they tried to get crosses in. But then it was also the role of Torres and Konsa to be able to win those aerial battles and get the ball going back the other way. And what all of this culminates in, what all of this contributes to, is the prevention of Manchester City's main driving force, their main player, the player that has been pushing them on through games. I'm of course talking about the main man, Erling Haaland. Before this match, he had scored in 13 consecutive games. That is incredibly impressive, but he didn't manage to right here, and that is due to the absolute brilliance in terms of defensive play that Aston Villa showcased. Here you can see 0 goals, 0.23 XG, a total shot of 3, and he only managed 17 touches in the entire game. A truly brilliant performance from this Aston Villa side due to their aggression, their defensive makeup, and their major defensive protocols that allowed them to snuff Haaland out of the game. And at that point, once you do that to this Manchester City side, it really does give you that momentum to start to push forwards. It was a fantastic defensive display that really was a brilliant piece of work on show. And you've got a really good example of all of this right here. This is Aston Villa defending against Manchester City out on City's right-hand side, Villa's left. But look at that defensive line. While it's not too high, the actual space between the defensive line and the forward line is so tight. It's so congested, really compact. And what's even better than that is the placement and real positioning of both of Aston Villa's centre midfielders. You've got Kamara and you've got Onana. Look at the distance between Aston Villa's defensive line and those two holding midfielders. There is nearly no distance whatsoever, and that prevents players from playing in those pockets. It forces the likes of Phil Foden just out a bit. Look at how congested it is for Bernardo Silva out on that left-hand side as well. It just makes it so very difficult for City to play in. It really doesn't give them any avenue to go forwards apart from down those wide areas, almost encouraging them down those wide areas. You've got those 3 Aston Villa players looking around Oscar Bob, but they're not necessarily being too aggressive. They're almost encouraging it on, preventing those spaces in between those defensive lines for Villa. And look how compact they're making this entire pitch. Really impressive. It prevented City from pushing forwards, and it was a fantastic defensive display. But of course, being defensively strong is only half of the puzzle, and that meant that Aston Villa needed to try and progress the ball forwards and create some opportunities. Counter-attacks were their main avenue of play, but also the utilisation of their left-hand side was something that really did catch my attention. What they did initially so very well is push their wingers in Buendia, Sancho a little bit later, and McGinn really narrow. What this did is just narrowed this Manchester City defensive line a little bit. City are rather unsure of themselves from a defensive point of view, and that means when you start to move players a little bit further in field, it drags those fullbacks, it drags those wingers, and just condenses the pitch a little bit more. But what this naturally does is open up space for some extra wide players, just condensing that play a little bit further. And then we need to talk about Lucas Digne, because what Lucas Digne was able to do is isolate those spaces out wide. Look at how they've been opened up a little bit more due to the narrowing of this Manchester City defensive line. And then you've got Lucas Digne being able to progress forwards. Let's take a look at Lucas Digne's heat map. Look at him, he's number 12 and he's almost playing as a left winger here. This is because Buendia ends up moving inside like we saw previously, or Jadon Sancho. But look how high he gets, look at how many times he gets towards the opposition byline. Really good and really impressive, and a proper attacking outlet for this Aston Villa setup. It was through this actually that they got their corner, which led to their all-important goal. And you can see a really good example of this right here. You've got the two Aston Villa centre-backs, but look at where Lucas Digne is, just on the edge of that Manchester City defensive line, looking to progress forwards. The ball over the top is really, really good, but as well as that, look at the positioning of Buendia and John McGinn, just on your close right-hand side, and Buendia is just a little bit central. This allows for that congestion of that Man City side, the narrowing of their side, meaning their fullback tuck in a little bit more, giving that bit more space for Lucas Digne to start those progressive marauding runs. Really, really impressive, and leads to Aston Villa's impressive goal. And of course, guys, before we end, we need to take a look at that all-important goal, the goal that won Aston Villa this crucial match. So, we have the corner. It's been played short over towards Buendia by Lucas Digne, and now we have a moment in play. Now, initially, after the game, Matty Cash said that Aston Villa were actually looking to take a specialist corner, meaning that there was a routine that they wanted to do to try and score a goal against Manchester City, something that they had pre-organised. However, I believe that Buendia sees something change, and I think a change in the status or a change in the game state means that he alters what happens here. And what I think happens is he sees the amount of space that Matty Cash is in on the outside of the box. He doesn't have a marker. If you look at the positioning of Savinho next to the referee, I believe he notices that Matty Cash is completely unmarked, and that changes his decision on what he wants to do. Morgan Rogers ends up coming short a little bit, I believe, to receive the pass. Look at the amount of players that are away from him. These City defenders do not realise what's going on, but Buendia decides to take it upon himself to find Matty Cash on the outside of the box. And the reason that I say that is because of the power that he puts on the pass. Buendia is a very good player, he's a player of quality, and this is not the kind of pass that you would look for if you were passing to Morgan Rogers. Far from it, which means that I believe he was actively looking for Matty Cash on the outside of the box, and it's now all about this touch in particular. The moment that he's able to take that touch first time away from Bernardo Silva gives him an opportunity. The second touch is absolutely sublime. Obviously, the winning touch, the winning goal, that gives Aston Villa the real daylight in this game, but it's a fantastic hit, and it gets set up by that brilliant initial first touch. It's such a sensational shot, and don't all goals look better when the goalkeeper stands still? I think they do, and it is just a sensational hit, a sensational goal, and a brilliant win for Aston Villa. But of course, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. What did you make of the game? What did you make of Man City and Aston Villa? And who were your real standout performance? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you, so please do get involved. Thank you ever so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learnt something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.